Hello guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Bantu Bro. This episode we're going to talk about China's ethnic minorities and reverse discrimination. Let me first tell you a recent hit news on Chinese Twitter Weibo. So a senior at a top university in China committed rape, but he was only sentenced to 18 months in jail. Hold on, that was actually 18 months suspended. And the better part is his school only puts him on probation with the following reasons. First, it was his first offense, and second, he was a graduating senior, and third, which is actually the most controversial one that enraged the entire Chinese internet, which is he is an ethnic minority. And that news led to a ton of discussions about Chinese minority policies, which is actually what I'm going to talk about today. So what is minority in China? Let me first show you a Chinese ID that everybody uses. It's as useful as the driver's license in the US. One of the fields actually says ethnicity. Yes, it's very transparent in China as far as your ethnicity goes. As you know, China is a very big country with 1.4 billion people. Over 91% have the ethnicity of Han. I'm actually one of them. One funny thing is, when I walk around in New York City, a lot of vendors would approach me like, Ni hao. If I don't respond, they will go, Konnichiwa. If I don't respond either, they will go, 안녕하세요. So in their mind, my face is Chinese, or at least East Asian. They're usually right, by the way. However, Chinese isn't equivalent to Han, or vice versa. Actually, China is a very ethnically diverse country with 55 minorities. Let me just tell you some big, well-known ethnic minorities in China by population in descending order. The first one is Hui. It has over 10 million in population. They don't look different from Han Chinese at all. The only difference is they believe in Muslim. The next minority is Manchu, which is actually the ruling people of the last Qing dynasty. The world famous pianist Lan Lan, or Long Long, to pronounce it correctly, is actually Manchu. A lot of people don't know that, including myself. But you can see they don't look that different from Han Chinese, right? Next example, Uyghur. They have 10 million people also. For those of you who know them already, hope this episode will give you some new perspectives, okay? And as you can see, Uyghur people look very different from Han Chinese, or so-called typical Chinese. Next two minorities kind of go hand in hand for both population and religion. So those are Mongol and Tibetan. They both have 6 million population, and they look pretty different from the Han Chinese. The last example has an even smaller population, and it is Korean. So there are actually 2 million ethnic Koreans living in the northeastern part of China. Did that surprise you? In terms of geographical distribution, most ethnic minorities actually live in so-called frontier provinces. So the provinces that border foreign countries. In fact, 4 out of 9 frontier provinces are autonomous regions that were created for and built for ethnic minorities. And there are more ethnic minorities in the southwestern part of China, especially in the Yunnan province. So Yunnan actually has 25 sizable ethnic minority groups. Next, I want to talk about a simplified version of the minority policies in China. So the policies were actually borrowed from the Soviet Union when the PRC was founded in 1949. And the founding principle is all ethnic groups are equal. And the policies promote self-governance in the form of forming autonomous regions. And I've summarized the policies' 3 supporting measures. First, ethnic minorities need to have their own leadership. The governors of those autonomous regions are ethnic minorities themselves. For example, the governor of the Tibetan Autonomous Region is of course Tibetan. However, the standard is the central government will parachute a party secretary to the autonomous region. And in terms of rank, the party secretary is higher than the governor. And of course, those party secretaries, they all have Han ethnicity. The second measure of the minority policies is to help develop the economy. As you can see, provinces and regions that have the most number of ethnic minorities tend to have lower GDP compared to the rest of the country. So the central government is actively addressing that by pairing up autonomous regions with relatively richer coastal provinces and cities. And the last measure I want to tell you about is the emphasis on science and education. It is widely accepted that the Han civilization has some systematic advantages over the minorities. So the central government, which is led by mostly Han people, wants to improve the education in those autonomous regions such that one day the ethnic minority students can develop their own homelands. And that, to a great extent, led to the controversial and somewhat distorted bonus point policy when it comes to standardized exams. This actually ties back to the previous episode on Gaokao. In most provinces, ethnic minority students can actually get 5 to 10 bonus points on top of their Gaokao score when being evaluated against their choice, which is the equivalent of application. Some extreme provinces offer 20 bonus points. Even 5 points is enough to get ahead of hundreds, if not thousands, of other students in those provinces. And the other educational benefits can be the minority students can get scholarships more easily in colleges. And outside of education on individual level, ethnic minorities are exempted from the one-child policy. I can talk about the one-child policy in an entire episode. Before the one-child policy was phased out, other than farmers, only ethnic minority families can have more than one child. For example, if my parents wanted to have another child after me, they would have to pay multiple times of their annual income of fines. And there were other negative consequences. You didn't hear it wrong. That was multiple times of a family's annual income. So the minorities were exempted from that. And the most questionable policy, in my opinion, is the whole society needs to have a higher tolerance on crime when it comes to ethnic minorities. So for example, if ethnic minority people committed some petty crimes, they should have lighter or no punishment. And that is the main factor that led the rapist that I mentioned at the beginning of this video at large. And that is what pissed off the Chinese netizens at most. They were furious at the reverse discrimination on the Han people, the majority Chinese. By the way, there is also discrimination on Chinese in China, this time favoring foreigners. I might also talk about that one in an entire episode in the future. I don't want to get into the politics, but I believe the original intent of China's minority policies is first to foster harmony. So harmony is actually a favorite word in China, between the majority Han and the rest of the ethnic minority groups. Although there are major cultural or even language differences between Han and the minorities, after all, we are one people, one nation. The second intent is to build prosperity and maintain stability in those frontier provinces and autonomous regions. So the central government genuinely would like to make the minority people's lives better. Of course, it doesn't want to give excuses to other countries to criticize issues like human rights, like persecuting minorities. You know what I'm talking about if you watch John Oliver. Honestly, I think it is more than being minority that led the rapist at large. There could very much be some complications that normal people like me will never know. But those top-down policies or principles have definitely more or less tied the hands of law enforcement or courts when they judge minority crimes. I think the potential cause I just mentioned is really embarrassing, but with the pressure from the general public and media, I hope this is going to change in the right direction to make China a real rule of law-based society. I'll see you in the next episode. So I have to share this before uploading this video. So a couple of days ago, the rapist university couldn't handle the mounting pressure from the social media, mainly from Weibo, and they announced that they're gonna expel this rapist. Although it's still 18 months suspended from the legal side. However, we're seeing it's moving to the right direction, right? I'm really gonna see you in the next episode. If you like this video, give me a like and subscribe.